Front Row Rugby. Interviews with rugby legends with Peter Stemmet.
Today, you are going to get a front row seat to the memorable Springbok career of 1995 Rugby World Cup champion Johan Roux. Johan, welcome to Front Row Rugby.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for inviting me.
Now, before we begin our conversation, let's take a look at this week's trivia question. Who were South Africa's first opponents in the June tests in 2006? Now, if you know the answer to the question, you can put it in the comment section down below, and we'll also find out if Johan knows the answer, but we'll do that at the end of the conversation. Johan, I would like to begin in 1994. The Springboks were given quite a hiding by England at Loftus in the first test match. You were then called up to take the number 9 jersey in the second test match. What was the atmosphere like in the Boks camp?
Yeah, it was funny. Ian Mack and before the first test, he had a thing on the board where he kept saying you would want to do something. You want to go to a ruck. You want to do everything. And then on the second test, it suddenly became you have to. You have to go to the ruck. You have to do this and that. You have to make a tackle. Yeah, it was embarrassing because it was a terrible England side. They've lost to provincial sides, and I think when I was roommates with Joel Stransky, and when we walked into the team room before the first test, the guys were joking around, and we actually looked at each other and said, there might be trouble here. We completely didn't take them at par value, and they just exposed us. So the second test was a hugely different story. The week, the build-up, the tenseness, the atmosphere, and I think it's that's why we managed to beat them, even though the weather was in their favour.
And for you personally, what did it feel like making your test debut for the Boks?
Yeah, it was weird. It's obviously a big moment, but because I've been involved, I was involved with the Boks, sitting on the bench, and on the previous tests, I think it wasn't such a big, huge moment. It was more about the game and winning the game. That was important, and after that was also the New Zealand tour coming up, so it was important to make sure that you play well enough to be picked to go onto the tour.
Speaking of that tour to New Zealand, I've had quite a few Springboks on this show that have told me that was the toughest tour that they had ever been on. Would you go along with that?
Yeah, it was a difficult tour. I mean, what actually happened was the first test against England, there was a invitational team that played the Northern Transvaal team. And Kitch Christie coached the invitational side and John Williams the Northern Transvaal side, and they smacked the invitational team, which was made up of a lot of the guys that should have been picked for the Springbok tour, and Northern Transvaal just ran all over them, and suddenly a lot of those Northern Transvaal guys were picked for the tour for the New Zealand tour. And we don't talk about whether guys should have been Springboks or not, but I think there were better guys that could have been picked for the tour. And also the forwards of Natal, of course Mac was coach. The forwards didn't really, like Guy Kebbel and that, they didn't want to do a scrum before the test. We didn't do one scrum. And then when it got to the Saturday, when I put the ball in, I almost had to start sprinting to get the ball at the back. That's how much we were pushed. So there were a lot of factors that influenced that squad and that tour before it even started. But yeah, it was tough. It was very tough tour. When you lose, it's not good. And especially when your midweek, the dirt trackers start losing, then it becomes problematic.
No doubt. Johan, I actually had Ian McIntosh on this show shortly before he passed. I believe that it was the last interview that he gave, so I'm very privileged to have been able to have him on the show. One thing he mentioned about that 1994 series against the All Blacks was that each team scored 3 tries in the series, and he believed that that meant it was quite close and we actually could have won the series. Would you go along with that?
Yeah, we should have beaten them easy, to be honest. The French just beat them when we arrived there. And we really, second test was in our hands. The third test, Yapi went straight through, should have just passed. We drew that test. Looking back on that, I would say this, the first test we should have lost. But test 2 and 3 should have been 2-1 for us, for sure.
Speaking of that second test, you'll remember it's now known for the biting incident from Johan le Roux. What was your reaction to that?
Look, the worst thing of that is people thought it, even now still think it was me, because Johan Roux and Johan le Roux. So, but you know what, Johan le Roux is a funny guy, and I know Fitzpatrick was antagonizing him and irritating him the whole test. I think it was just a bit of frustration, but they turned it into such a huge thing. It was stupid. I mean, it's just a bite.
And many would say that it was justified as well. Let's move on then.
And sorry to interrupt you, but at that stage, punching and kicking was still allowed. So, I mean, a bite is nothing compared to the punching and kicking that was going on.
Quite right. There was a lot of that going on in those days. Johan, we spoke about Ian McIntosh. After that tour to New Zealand, he was out of the picture. How did you experience him as a coach?
He was a wonderful guy, a wonderful coach. I think the only problem was that he listened too much to the Natal players. There was guys that had big influence. The Guy Kebbell, John Allen, and they kind of ruled. But as a technical coach, he was fantastic. His passion for the game was fantastic. So from that point of view, he was a fantastic guy. It's a pity when I heard he passed away, and but I think his legacy will live on forever.
And how about your assessment of Kitch Christie?
Yeah, we grew up with Kitch, so he was also our coach at the Lions, Transvaal at that stage. So we loved him. He was such an incredible guy that we never wanted to disappoint him. If you had a bad game, you couldn't get less what anyone else said. You just felt you disappointed Kitch. And then when he became sick and things like that, it was incredible. After we beat Natal in the Lions Cup, the next day we were at hospital with him, and all we could talk about was rugby. As sick as he was. So no, he was an incredible guy. Out of the two very different people, I think Mac was more passionate, where Kitch was a lot more analytical. I mean, I don't know if people told you, but in 1995 World Cup, he actually phoned some news guys at Disney World, because they got the biggest or most sophisticated weather system in the world to plan for the weather. So, he was that kind of guy. Attention to detail was incredible too.
I have heard that Disney story, and I seem to think it was Kobus Witsel or Bali Swart who told the story in a TV interview that I must have seen quite a few years ago now. Johan, let's move on to the 1995 Rugby World Cup and the pre-tournament training sessions. Joel Stransky told me that it was torture. What do you say?
Yeah, look, Kitch believed in fitness. So we did fitness. I mean, we did fitness the last week before the World Cup final. And till the day Kitch died, he still believed that that fitness session we did on the Monday before the World Cup final helped us in the overtime. But it was, everyone was fighting for a spot to be, because Kitch made it clear there's going to be a gold team and a green team, and everyone knew beforehand where they were going to be. So everyone was fighting for a spot there. So you can imagine if you put highly big guys, highly that's fit as hell, and each one wants a spot. It's going to be ugly, and it was ugly. But it also helped us, I think, to prepare for the World Cup. Because that made us really competitive in everything that we did.
Your first match of the tournament was against Romania. I think it's fair to say it's a match that the Springboks were expected to win by a large margin, but it turned out to be quite a tough affair. What was it about them that was so difficult to combat?
No, you know what happened? The day, their last training session were at Hamilton's or something like that. And apparently Hamilton's had a game the night before, and they didn't clean the change rooms, and they didn't. It was filthy, and so it motivated these guys so much that when they arrived on the field that next day, they were kamikazes. I mean, they tackled us to absolute crap, and that was the beginning. And we also played them a little bit wrong. We tried to tap everything that Kitch wanted, but we should have just taken the points up front. But it's a difficult game, because if you beat them 100-0, everyone says, "Oh, it's expected." And suddenly you beat them 30, whatever. I can't even remember what the score was, and people say, "Oh, it was a tough game." What happened? So it's one of those no-win situations.
Similar to Canada, if you win by a large margin, people would say it was only Canada, and as you say, was the case with Romania. But I must ask you about the Canadian match. Did you get any shots in during that fight?
No, I didn't. It was a crazy. Canada came out to intimidate and try and cause that from the start. It's the only way they could win. So unfortunately that happened, and James got banned from the tournament. And if you really look at the video, there's no way he should have done that. I know in the hearings the lawyers were saying, "Look at how aggressive you're running towards the guy." I mean, it's absolute rubbish. But yeah, that also opened up for Chester to come in. So you have to take the good with the bad.
Indeed. And speaking of bad, I think that would be a very underwhelming way to describe the weather that you guys encountered in the semi-final against France in Durban. I know that you started the match on the bench and then came on later, but during the match, were you sitting there looking at the conditions and thinking, "I'll be quite happy not to get onto the field here today"?
Yeah, no, I mean, and yours never got injured, so I never expected. I wasn't worried, because yours never gets injured. And suddenly, Rudy Joubert said to me, "Warm up." I said, "For what?" And he said, "Because yours shoulder is sore. He's coming off." But I don't know if people told you, but the guy that actually saved us from going to the final was Louis Luyt, because they wanted to not play the match. And if we didn't play the match, then we would have been out. And I was listening to him telling the guys what would happen to them if they don't play. And he made it abundantly clear that this game will take place even if the guys have to swim. So he was the guy that saved the World Cup for South Africa.
And I think we're all very grateful for that. Johan, when it came to the Rugby World Cup final itself, maybe it was just a stroke of luck, but the TV cameras managed to catch you and Markgraaff on the bench celebrating and cheering the guys on. And it became quite a famous moment as well. Just describe what it was like sitting there watching that Rugby World Cup final.
It's terrible to watch a game. You'd rather be on the field than sitting to watching, because when you're not involved, it's you're more nervous than playing. When you're playing, at least you can once you have a couple of tackles and the physicalness, the tension kind of disappears. But geez, today I think we were all at the edge. I think they put the cameras on us, but if you put it on half the people there, they would look the same. And I think half the people in South Africa at their homes, it would have looked the same. We were just spectators wanting a side to win, really. That's what we were.
And what did it feel like when the referee blew the final whistle?
No, of course, then it was jubilation. Something you work so hard for, and that we work so hard for and planned, and that when a plan comes together, it's always wonderful. And it was just a great feeling.
It was a wonderful moment for the country. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I was just a young boy at the time, but as I say, special memories. So, Johan, at the same time, rugby was on the verge of turning professional. What can you tell us about the conversations that Francois Pienaar was having with you guys regarding contracts?
You know what? There was. I think we went to Sun City after we did the tour through South Africa, through Joburg on the bus, and there was conversations that came out that they wanted us to have a professional, that things are turning professional, and Francois was representing a side. I don't want to go into too much details, but yeah, it was interesting times, because as the World Cup winners, all the sides wanted to have the World Cup winners to sign with them. So you had Pekka on the one side and Murdoch on the other side. And if it wasn't for us winning the World Cup, I don't know where it would have gone, because the All Blacks and Australia especially wanted to go with Pekka, and it would have been a huge disruption in world rugby if that happened.
And I guess we'll never know, but I think it's fair to say that it worked out okay in the end. Let's move on to 1996 and the Tri-Nations. You featured in that, away from home, first up against the Wallabies and the All Blacks. We wouldn't have known at the time, but as we now know 20, 30 years later, every single year it seems as if the Boks go to Australia and New Zealand, and I think we probably lose 80, even 90% of the time. And then funny enough, especially the Wallabies, they'll come to South Africa and then we beat them almost 90% of the time. Johan, why is it so difficult for the Boks to go over there?
Yeah, I think it's just the number one is the traveling there, and it's weird. You lie in the bed the whole week, and at 3:00 in the morning you hear the TV's on in the guys' rooms, because your body clock, especially when you travel from west to east, is terrible. It's much easier traveling east to west. And that's got a huge impact on it. Look, New Zealand is always New Zealand. The sides there, when you play New Zealand, you can beat them by 70 points, and in the last 10 minutes, you'll still get the hardest tackles of the game. They just play for 80 minutes, so their teams are quality. Very difficult to win there. But Australia used to be much better sides, because it was only Queensland and New South Wales really that caused the cohesiveness in Australia to be much better than it is now. So Australia was a proper rugby side. And now they've got huge problems, but when we played them, they were always a very intelligent side to play against. So you're playing against intelligent guys that's highly athletic. Whereas when you play the All Blacks, they're very physical and maybe don't play as intelligent rugby. But their physicalness makes up for it. So, yeah, I mean, I think it took us a long time to really adapt to the speed and the physicalness of that rugby coming out of just playing here between ourselves for so long.
And then your last test match for the Springboks was just a few weeks later against the All Blacks in Durban. How disappointed were you that it would end there?
You know what? It's weird. I wasn't. It was fun. Rugby was always kind of a second, a second thing for me. I mean, I always loved golf so much. I know Kitch, when we traveled to New Zealand and Australia, he said to me that I'm not allowed to bring my golf clubs to the airport, which I found astounding. But they all knew. I think everyone knew that, golf was my number one love and rugby was my second. So, it wasn't. I was ready to stop, and when I was ready, said, I enjoyed the time there, but there's always going to be new guys.
Quite right. Now, earlier I spoke to you about Kitch Christie and Ian McIntosh. Obviously, in 1996, André Markgraaff had become the new Springbok coach. Tell us a little bit about him as a coach.
He's there, André, again, very different. Obviously, Afrikaans guys, the Afrikaans mentality was there. He loved his forwards. So we didn't really have a lot of interaction. But he was I think the good thing about André was he had good people, surrounded himself with good people, and he listened to people also. But he was a good motivator. Look, out of the three, I spent the least amount of time with him. I think I only played under him with very, very few games under him. So it's difficult for me to speak about him. But I enjoyed my time under him. He had certain vision for the side, and I knew it was kind of my end. So I was gone.
I just want to come back to that story about the contract, Sir Johan, because I've also heard from some of the guys that obviously the 1995 winners, they had a certain contract, and then the new players in the team, they had a different contract, and that caused a little bit of tension in the camp. Now, I can understand that if you didn't have a World Cup contract, that maybe there would be more unhappiness from those guys, and that you were obviously one of the guys that did have a World Cup contract, but so maybe you didn't quite experience it as much. But I'm just interested to hear from you if you experienced anything like that.
Look, it must have been very difficult for the guys who didn't have the World Cup contracts, as we called it, to play provincial rugby next to us, because you're playing the same game, you're playing the same team, we're getting paid, they're getting paid, it definitely caused a lot of problems. And that's actually why Australia and New Zealand wanted to go with Becker, because there everyone would have got paid. We were kind of selfish signing with Murdoch because only we got paid. So looking back at it, it must have been really difficult for the guys. And it definitely caused conflict. It also caused problems between us and Luyt. It didn't affect the other provincial guys because they weren't close to Luyt, but he never liked that we got him into a corner and almost made him sign the contract with us. And he held it against us for a very long time. So we were right there in the lion's den, and we felt the brunt of that hate every week.
Johan, I've actually read a brilliant biography of Louis Luyt. It was written by Max du Preez a few years ago now, actually. But it's something that was quite interesting while I was reading it. It did come across as if some players had a good relationship with him and others didn't. And maybe there were others still who didn't have any relationship at all. Maybe it was just a hello and a goodbye whenever you saw him. I'd like to hear from you what your relationship was like with Louis Luyt.
Yeah, I had a good relationship with him. I liked him because it was, he really loved rugby. Really loved rugby. Always wanted the best for rugby. He was almost like Trump, who says, make a better, USA. And everyone hates him. You have guys that hate him and guys who loved him. So I would think it's almost putting him as the Trump of South Africa. But the one thing, he really loved rugby. And he tried to do whatever it takes. In saying that, he likes to be in control. And he didn't like anyone to oppose him. So if you had different viewpoints and he didn't like you, you were put to the side. I liked him. He was a very intelligent guy. You had to, when you go up against him, which we tried to do on a couple of times, we had to have our things really in order, because we actually went on strike at the Lions. That's before the World Cup contracts were signed. And all we wanted was, at that stage, we were paid with the envelope after every game. We wanted a salary, fixed salary, so we can finance cars and things like that. We wanted medical, and we wanted our wives to be able to sit in a box. I mean, that's what we went on strike for. And eventually, I mean, couple of weeks later, we signed the World Cup contracts, which turned everything upside down. But during that strike, it was an interesting time how we tried to divide and conquer the side. And it was incredible how we all stuck together, and that kept us together even afterwards when he came for us. We knew we could handle it.
It's interesting how today those demands seem like the simplest of things. Johan, let me ask you, who was your toughest opponent?
Oh, you know what? It's difficult to say, because there's always good scrum halves, that you play against. Even from local, Kevin Putt in Natal was brilliant scrum half. Joost obviously was always there. So there was good scrum halves. Then you go overseas, you play against Greg and Dewey Morris, played against Bishop, the New Zealander, at the best hands of any scrum half ever. So it's so difficult to say one, because scrum half is one of those positions where internationally there's always good scrum halves. Wherever you go, it's kind of a position that it's a critical position. So one of your best players should always be a scrum half.
Some wonderful players that you've mentioned there indeed. Johan, is there a particularly funny moment that you can share with us from your time with the Springboks?
There's lots, but not that I can speak to you. There's incredible moments, but definitely not what we can talk about on this program.
Fair enough. As the saying goes, what goes on tour stays on tour. Johan, is there a particular player at the moment who you admire?
again, it's to pick one player is really difficult. I think that in the South African side, we've built such an incredible side. I loved Malcolm Marx. Geez, such a pity that he's injured. Loved him. I love his name on Etzebeth. Kwacha when he comes on. Then you go to the back. I mean, Colby. There's so many players. That's incredible. And internationally now, you almost don't have a bad player anymore. The top teams, they'll expose a bad player so quickly, it's unbelievable. The speed of the game. I was telling my sons the other day, the game's so quick now, I don't know whether I would have made it to all the rucks. You have to be so quick and so fast now. One player, I mean, obviously Dupont is, everyone's raves about Dupont. He's a brilliant scrum half. So much diversity, and that's what makes them so difficult to play. They do things that no other team does, and that you won't expect from players.
And what are you up to these days?
I'm into investment banking. I was a stockbroker, investment banker all my life. So we've got a small investment bank in Italy, and we actually busy raising on to invest in sport and sport-related businesses.
So I've got to ask you then on that topic, Johan, I'm a big fan of investing in an S&P 500 ETF. That's kind of my philosophy at my level. Am I on the right track?
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's incredible. The Americans, it's almost like the New Zealanders. They think they can never lose. So when you invest in America, the market comes down a little bit, but they're so conditioned that the market will just go up and up and up, that the mentality is that the market just goes up and up and up. I'm just happy not into crypto, because I believe that's the biggest load of crap in the world.
Look, I stay far away from stuff that I don't understand, so that's what I do there. Johan, let's finish up by looking at the trivia question. Who were South Africa's first opponents in the June tests in 2006? Do you know the answer, Johan?
2006, I have no idea.
All right, we started off with a 2-test series against Scotland.
I wouldn't have had a clue. My trivia on rugby is terrible.
The only thing of significance really from those 2 test matches was that Skalkberger broke his neck in that series, and then we were obviously without him for the rest of the season. Johan, let me say that it was lovely having you on Front Row Rugby today, an absolute pleasure, and I hope that we can have you on again in the future.
Anytime, Peter. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed that video, why not tackle the like button? You can also subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any content from Front Row Rugby. See you next time.
Front Row Rugby. Interviews with rugby legends with Peter Stemmet.